I'm Matt, and as I sit here reflecting on everything that has transpired, I can hardly recognize the life I once had. My journey with Laura began like a beautiful fairy tale, where every moment felt filled with promise and joy. I remember the first time I laid eyes on her, a sunny afternoon in a small cafe. She was sitting by the window, sunlight dancing in her hair, completely absorbed in a book. It was as if she had stepped out of a dream, and I was drawn to her instantly. We struck up a conversation. And from that day on, it felt like we were meant to be together. In the beginning, our relationship was intoxicating. We spent countless hours exploring the city, laughing until our sides hurt, and sharing our hopes and dreams. We would talk about everything: our favorite movies, our families, and our ambitions. Laura was not just my partner, she was my confidant and best friend. We talked about marriage, children, and building a life together, imagining a future filled with love and laughter. However, as the months turned into years, the reality of life began to set in. Laura and I both dove headfirst into our careers, striving to make a name for ourselves. At first, we balanced our professional lives and relationships effortlessly, but slowly, things began to shift. Laura started working longer hours, often returning home late. I convinced myself that it was just the demands of her job, that she was simply committed to her career. But as time went on, small cracks began to form in the foundation of our relationship. I noticed the changes: her once vibrant energy dulled, and our conversations became less frequent. She no longer seemed excited about our future or even about spending time together. I would suggest date nights or weekend getaways, only to be met with half-hearted excuses. "I'm too tired" or "I have too much work to do" became a regular refrain. The more I tried to reach out, the more distant she became. I found myself pacing the floors of our home late at night, wondering what had happened to the woman I had fallen in love with. It was as if a wall had gone up between us, and I felt powerless to tear it down. I tried to dismiss my growing concerns, telling myself that I was just overreacting, but deep down, I knew something was off. My suspicions heightened when I started noticing her phone behavior. Laura became protective of her phone, often taking it with her to the bathroom or hiding the screen whenever I walked into the room. The buzzing notifications would interrupt our silence, yet she would dismiss them, claiming they were work-related. I wanted to trust her, but my instincts screamed otherwise. It was a gut-wrenching feeling, knowing that the love we had built was now shrouded in uncertainty and doubt. Friends began to notice the changes too. Conversations turned awkward when they asked about our relationship. "How are you guys doing?" they'd ask, and I could feel the weight of their concern. I often responded with a forced smile, telling them everything was fine, but inside, I was crumbling. I didn't want to admit that my perfect life with Laura was falling apart, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. And then there was the night everything changed. It was just another ordinary evening, or so I thought. I had come home from work early, hoping to surprise Laura with dinner. I had set the table, lit candles, and played our favorite playlist softly in the background. I was excited to reconnect with her, to reignite the spark that had dimmed. But when she walked through the door, her expression was far from the warm welcome I had imagined. As she entered, I noticed a strange look on her face, a mix of surprise and something I couldn't quite place. I asked about her day, but she brushed off my questions, her mind seemingly elsewhere. I could sense a tension in the air, a heaviness that hung between us. The moment felt pivotal, and I found myself questioning everything I thought I knew. That evening, as I lay awake in bed, I replayed every interaction, every conversation. My mind spiraled into dark thoughts, and I couldn't shake the feeling that I was losing her. I began to wonder, was it just work, or was there something more? Had Laura found someone else, someone who made her happier than I could? It was then that I realized I needed answers. I could no longer rely on assumptions or ignore the gnawing doubts in my mind. My heart ached with fear, but I was determined to uncover the truth. The love I once cherished felt tainted by suspicion, and I had to know if my fears were justified. Little did I know, the journey ahead would be one filled with betrayal, heartbreak, and ultimately, a reckoning I never anticipated. As my unease grew, I found myself seeking comfort in the company of friends. Our circle had always been tight-knit, filled with laughter, inside jokes, and the shared experiences that bind people together. I valued their opinions and cherished the camaraderie we had built over the years. But now, I was stepping into treacherous territory. one where I would have to navigate not only my feelings but also the murky waters of gossip and speculation. One evening, we gathered at our favorite pub, a cozy place with dim lighting and the familiar sounds of clinking glasses and chatter. It was supposed to be a light-hearted night, filled with laughter and camaraderie, but my mind was elsewhere. I sat with my friends, trying to focus on the conversation, but I could feel the tension within me. As we reminisced about old times, my thoughts kept drifting back to Laura and the growing suspicion that gnawed at my insides. As the night wore on, I caught snippets of conversations that pricked my ears. I overheard Mark, one of my closest friends, mention Laura in passing. "I saw Laura at that new art gallery last week," he said, raising his glass. "She was with some guy the first didn't recognize." The casual tone in his voice struck me like a punch to the gut. I felt a chill run down my spine, but I forced myself to brush it off as a misunderstanding. Perhaps it was just a coincidence, maybe she was simply networking for work. But the seed of doubt had been planted, and I couldn't ignore it. As the night continued, I noticed more and more subtle comments and whispered conversations that seemed to carry an underlying current of concern. Sarah, another good friend, exchanged worried glances with Mark whenever Laura's name came up. I caught snippets of conversations like "she's been acting different lately and did you hear about that guy she was seen with?" The words echoed in my mind, swirling around like a storm, chipping away at the fragile facade I had constructed around our relationship. I found myself asking questions, both to them and to myself, about what was happening. Was I the last to know? Did they know something I didn't? That night, I was acutely aware of the weight of their words, each one cutting deeper than the last. I tried to laugh it off, but my heart raced with every mention of Laura. Every joke felt like a stab at my heart, and I could no longer deny the discomfort growing within me. A few days later, I met up with another friend, Jake, who was more straightforward than most. We were sitting in his living room, beers in hand, when I decided to take the plunge. "Hey, have you noticed anything strange with Laura lately?" I asked, my voice laced with uncertainty. Jake paused, studying me for a moment before responding. "Honestly, man, I've heard some things." I didn't want to say anything because I thought it might just be rumors. My heart sank as he continued. "But a couple of people mentioned they've seen her out with different guys. It's been a topic of conversation lately. And I thought you should know." The words hung in the air, heavy and suffocating. I felt the ground beneath me shift, and the room suddenly felt smaller. It was like a fog had descended, blurring my vision and clouding my thoughts. I wanted to scream, to shake him and demand more details, but all I could manage was a nod, my voice caught in my throat. "What do you mean?" I managed to ask, my heart racing. Jake leaned back, his expression serious. "I don't want to jump to conclusions, but there have been whispers. People saying she's been seen having dinner with someone who isn't you. They think it's more than just friends hanging out." Each word felt like a dagger, piercing my heart and leaving a trail of doubt in its wake. I couldn't believe what I was hearing, it felt surreal, like a twisted nightmare I couldn't wake up from. After our conversation, I couldn't shake the feeling of betrayal that washed over me. The implications of what I had just learned sank in, and I felt trapped in a whirlwind of emotions: anger, sadness, confusion. How could Laura do this? Why wouldn't she tell me if something was bothering her? I had been so focused on the distance growing between us that I hadn't considered the possibility of infidelity. But now, the idea has taken root in my mind, growing like a dark shadow over our once happy relationship. I started to replay every moment I had shared with Laura in my mind. Her laughter, her smiles, and the little things we used to enjoy together felt tainted. I could almost hear her voice echoing in my ears as I recalled the times she had come home late, her excuses seeming more flimsy with every passing moment. The memories that once brought me joy now felt like sharp thorns, piercing my heart as I questioned every interaction we had. In the following days, I found myself withdrawing from friends. I felt like I was living in a bubble of isolation, carrying the burden of my suspicions alone. I would hear laughter and conversations around me, but the joy felt distant, unreachable. I felt like I was living a double life, pretending that everything was fine while my world was slowly crumbling. Despite my internal turmoil, I couldn't bring myself to confront Laura directly. I was caught in a web of uncertainty, unsure if I was ready to face the truth. Whatever it might be, my friends' whispers haunted me, their concerns echoing in my mind, pushing me closer to the edge of confrontation. I began to feel like a detective in my own life, trying to piece together clues that only deepened the mystery surrounding Laura. Each day that passed felt like an eternity. My heart was heavy with unanswered questions, and I struggled to find the courage to seek the truth. I couldn't shake the feeling of betrayal that lurked in the corners of my mind. And with each passing moment, I knew I was inching closer to a confrontation that would change everything. Little did I know that the truth I was searching for was about to shatter my world completely. As the days turned into weeks, the shadows of doubt and betrayal cast over my heart grew darker. The whispers from my friends echoed relentlessly in my mind, and I found myself caught in a relentless spiral of anxiety and suspicion. I felt as though I was losing control of my life, and the only way to regain it was to uncover the truth behind Laura's increasingly elusive behavior. It became clear to me that I needed to observe her, carefully and discreetly. The idea of spying on someone I loved filled me with a sense of dread. It felt wrong, like I was betraying her trust before even knowing the full extent of her actions. Yet, the gnawing fear of infidelity was stronger than my moral reservations. Each night, I lay awake, replaying our interactions, searching for the tiniest signs of deceit, desperately hoping I would wake up to find it had all been a misunderstanding. I started with her laptop, a portal to her digital world. While Laura was at work, I crept into our home office, my heart racing as I glanced around to ensure no one was watching. The laptop sat innocently on the desk, its screen dark, as if unaware of the storm brewing within me. I hesitated, torn between the desire for answers and the fear of what I might find. But with a deep breath, I opened it, and the harsh blue light illuminated my face, reflecting the turmoil within me. As I navigated her desktop, I felt like an intruder in a world I thought I knew. The folders were meticulously organized, a testament to her nature, but my eyes were drawn to the applications she frequently used: email, social media, and messaging platforms. My heart pounded as I clicked on her email, each second feeling like an eternity. I found dozens of unread messages, many from her colleagues and friends, but there were also some from men I didn't recognize. My heart sank further as I clicked on one, revealing a thread of playful banter and flirty comments that made my stomach twist. "Can't wait to see you this weekend. It'll be our little secret," read one of the messages. I felt as though the ground had shifted beneath my feet. Who was this guy? My mind raced, and I quickly closed the laptop, unable to digest the implications of what I had just seen. I needed more evidence, more clarity. This couldn't be it. Days passed, and I became increasingly adept at concealing my suspicions. While Laura went about her day-to-day life, I meticulously observed her habits and routines. I took note of the times she left for work, when she returned, and any uncharacteristic shifts in her schedule. I found myself analyzing every interaction, searching for hidden meanings in her words and actions. When she mentioned being busy or tired, I couldn't help but wonder if it was truly work-related or if it was a cover for something more sinister. On one particularly cold evening, I made a bold decision. I would delve deeper into her social media accounts. While she was in the shower, I grabbed her phone, my heart racing as I unlocked it with the code I had memorized. Scrolling through her messages felt like opening Pandora's box. I was terrified of what I might find. The notifications flooded in, a cacophony of laughter, inside jokes, and an unsettling number of messages from unfamiliar names. One thread in particular caught my attention, a conversation with a man named Alex. Their exchanges were flirtatious and riddled with emojis, the kind of playful banter that should have been reserved for a romantic partner. Not a friend. My heart raced as I read through the messages, each one confirming my worst fears. "You make me laugh like no one else," read one. Another stated, "Can't wait for our next adventure. Just the two of us." The implications were clear, and I felt a sinking realization wash over me. Laura was involved with someone else, and the facade of our life together was crumbling. I was filled with a mix of anger and betrayal, each new revelation feeding my growing sense of injustice. How could she do this to me? The woman I loved, the woman I had built a life with, was sharing her heart, and perhaps more, with another man. I felt as though I had been punched in the gut, the air knocked from my lungs, leaving me breathless and trembling with rage. The next morning, I confronted the day with a heavy heart. I couldn't bear the weight of this knowledge any longer. I needed to confront her, to lay out the evidence I had gathered, but a part of me hesitated. What if I was wrong? What if I had misinterpreted everything? The fear of confrontation was paralyzing. But I knew I couldn't continue living a lie. pretending that everything was okay when it was anything but. As I sat at the kitchen table, staring blankly at a cup of coffee that had grown cold, I realized I had reached a breaking point. I had to know the truth, not just for my sake but for the sake of our relationship. The weight of her betrayal felt unbearable, and I needed to confront her about the evidence I had gathered. The next time Laura came home late, I would be ready for her. I would demand answers and expose the lies that had festered in the dark corners of our lives. Little did I know that the confrontation I had been dreading would lead me down a path of devastation, one that would ultimately change the course of my life forever. I could feel the storm brewing on the horizon, and it was only a matter of time before it would break. As I prepared myself for the inevitable confrontation, a part of me yearned for clarity, while another part braced itself for the painful truth that awaited. The tension in the air was palpable as I prepared for the confrontation that had been building within me for weeks. I could feel my heart racing, a mix of anxiety and anger coursing through my veins. I knew I couldn't delay it any longer. I had gathered enough evidence to confront Laura about her betrayal, and I was tired of living in this web of doubt. The truth had to come out, no matter how painful it might be. That evening, Laura came home later than usual. The clock ticked slowly, each second amplifying my anxiety as I waited for her to walk through the door. My mind raced with scenarios of how the confrontation would unfold. Would she break down and confess? Would she deny everything? I had rehearsed countless arguments in my head, but nothing could truly prepare me for the reality of the moment. When she finally arrived, the air felt charged. She entered with a casual smile, but the moment she noticed my serious expression, it faltered. I stood in the living room, arms crossed, trying to appear calm, but I could feel the adrenaline surging through me, ready to burst forth. "Laura, we need to talk," I said, my voice steady yet firm. She tilted her head slightly, a flash of confusion crossing her features. "What's wrong?" she asked, her tone light, but I could see a flicker of something deeper in her eyes. Was it fear? Guilt? I took a deep breath, steadying myself for what was to come. "I know what's been going on. I've seen the messages and the conversations with Alex. I know you've been spending time with other men." Each word felt like a weighty accusation, but I needed to say it, to put the truth out in the open. Her expression shifted instantly, the casual demeanor replaced with a look of shock. "Matt, you're overreacting. I don't know what you're talking about," she replied, her voice trembling slightly. The denial felt rehearsed, as if she had been preparing for this moment but hadn't expected me to catch her. "I'm not overreacting. I've seen everything," I shot back, unable to contain the anger that bubbled to the surface. "You've been lying to me, Laura. You've been seeing someone else behind my back, and I want the truth. You owe me that much." Her eyes widened, and I could see the realization hit her. The fear I had sensed earlier was now unmistakable, mingling with the defiance in her gaze. "You're making a huge mistake, Matt. I'm not seeing anyone. It's just work friends. You know how much pressure I've been under." I shook my head, disbelief washing over me. "Work friends? Is that what you call flirtatious texts and secret meetups? This isn't just about work. You're hiding something from me, and I deserve to know the truth." Her gaze dropped to the floor, and for a moment, it felt like the world had stopped. The silence between us was deafening, heavy with unspoken words. I could feel the tension crackling in the air as if we were on the edge of an abyss that neither of us could comprehend. "Matt, please. You have to believe me," she pleaded, her voice softer now, but I could see the cracks forming in her composure. The defiance that had once held her together was fading, replaced by something raw and vulnerable. "I would never do that to you. I love you." But those words felt hollow, echoing through my mind as I recalled the evidence I had uncovered. Her love felt conditional, shadowed by the secrets she was keeping. "If you love me, then why are you lying? Why not just be honest?" I pressed, desperate for her to acknowledge the truth that loomed between us. As I watched her, I realized that the fear in her eyes wasn't just for herself, it was the fear of losing everything we had built together. For a fleeting moment, I almost felt pity for her. But that feeling quickly morphed into anger, fueling my determination to uncover the truth. "I deserve more than just empty promises, Laura. You need to stop denying this. You've been caught, and it's time to face the music," I continued, my voice rising with the intensity of my emotions. "Who is Alex? What's going on between you two?" She hesitated, her lips trembling as she searched for words. "It's not what you think. Alex is just a friend from work. We were discussing projects, nothing more. Her response felt feeble, a last-ditch effort to salvage whatever was left of her reputation. I could feel my patience wearing thin. Just a friend? You expect me to believe that? I've seen the way you talk to him, the way you text him. It's not just friendly chatter. Matt, please, she cried, her voice cracking. You don't understand. I was feeling overwhelmed at work, and I needed someone to talk to. It didn't mean anything, I swear. Her desperation was evident, but it only fueled my anger. So, you decided to confide in another man instead of coming to your husband? Is that your idea of a healthy relationship? I retorted, the hurt and betrayal rising to the surface like a tidal wave. I didn't mean to hurt you. She pleaded, tears welling up in her eyes. I was just lonely. I thought I could handle it on my own. I never meant for it to go this far. The vulnerability in her voice stirred something inside me, but I quickly pushed it aside. This wasn't about her excuses or apologies, it was about the betrayal I felt. You need to understand how this looks from my perspective, Laura. I trusted you, and you've shattered that trust. This isn't just a misunderstanding, this is betrayal. As I stood there, the weight of the moment settled heavily on my shoulders. I had entered this confrontation hoping for clarity, for an explanation that would help me make sense of the chaos in my heart. Instead, I found myself engulfed in a storm of conflicting emotions: love, anger, disappointment, and the fear of losing someone I had once considered my everything. Matt, please don't do this, she whispered, her voice laced with desperation. I can fix this. We can fix this. I'll cut ties with Alex. Just give me another chance. Her pleas felt like a double-edged sword, cutting through my resolve while simultaneously reigniting the hope that maybe, just maybe, we could salvage what was left. But deep down, I knew that the damage had been done. Trust, once broken, was incredibly difficult to rebuild. I don't know if I can just forget what you've done, I admitted, my voice trembling slightly as I fought back my emotions. It's going to take time for me to process all of this. I need space to think. The words hung heavily between us, creating an invisible barrier that felt insurmountable. Laura's face fell, and I could see the realization wash over her. This was not just a disagreement, it was the beginning of an unraveling that neither of us could predict. At that moment, I understood that the confrontation had not only exposed her secrets but had also laid bare the fractures in our relationship. We were standing on the precipice of something monumental, and I had to decide whether to leap into the unknown or pull back and try to salvage the remnants of our love. As I turned to leave the room, I could feel her eyes on me, filled with a mixture of fear and regret. I didn't know what the future held for us, but one thing was clear: the road ahead would be long and painful, and the confrontation had only been the beginning of a battle for the truth that would ultimately define our fate. After that explosive confrontation with Laura, I found myself in a whirlwind of emotions. Anger, betrayal, and a profound sense of loss consumed me. I couldn't shake the feeling that simply walking away and filing for divorce wouldn't be enough to alleviate the pain she had inflicted on me. I wanted her to understand the magnitude of her betrayal, to face the consequences of her actions, not just from me, but from everyone in our lives. A quiet separation felt like a cop-out. I needed something more visceral, something that would make a lasting impact. As I sat alone in our dimly lit living room, the shadows flickering against the walls felt like reflections of the turmoil within me. That's when it hit me: I would orchestrate a public revelation of her infidelity. I envisioned throwing a party, a gathering filled with friends, acquaintances, and everyone who mattered in our social circle. This would be the stage for my grand unveiling of Laura's true self, an exposé that would leave her no choice but to confront her actions. I knew this plan would come with its risks. It was one thing to harbor resentment and bitterness in the privacy of my thoughts. It was another to lay it all bare in front of the people we both cared about. But the more I considered it, the more justified I felt. If she thought she could betray me without repercussions, then she was sorely mistaken. I wanted her to feel the weight of her choices and experience the shame of being publicly exposed. I quickly started reaching out to my closest friends, those who had seen the cracks in our relationship and had been there for me during the tumultuous weeks leading up to this moment. I explained my plan, not leaving out the details of her betrayal. The reactions were a mixture of shock, sympathy, and unwavering support. "Are you sure you want to do this, Matt?" one friend, Jake, asked, concern etched across his face. "I get that you're hurt, but this seems extreme." Extreme is what she did to me, I replied, my voice resolute. This is not just about revenge, it's about making sure she knows what she's done. It's about accountability. The more I spoke, the more my friends rallied behind me, their enthusiasm igniting my determination. We began discussing the logistics of the party, where it would be held, who to invite, and how to execute my plan without raising any suspicion with Laura. We settled on a friend's spacious backyard, the perfect setting for what would become a night of reckoning. With the party date set, I turned my focus to gathering evidence that would effectively lay bare Laura's infidelity. I rifled through the digital files I had collected, the screenshots of messages, the photographs, and even the emails. Each piece felt like a dagger, a reminder of the trust that had been shattered. I meticulously organized everything, creating a presentation of sorts that would showcase the truth. I spent hours combing through our shared computer and her social media accounts, determined to compile a comprehensive dossier. I highlighted the most damning messages, exchanges filled with flirtation, coded language, and promises of keeping it secret. I even printed out several photos of her with Alex, some that hinted at a deeper connection than mere friendship, pictures taken during late-night outings, smiles that spoke volumes, and the kind of intimacy that should only exist between partners. One of my friends, Sarah, who had been privy to my plan, suggested that I create a slideshow to accompany the reveal. Why not make it an event? She said excitedly. You can share the images and texts in front of everyone. That way, there's no escaping the truth. The idea resonated deeply with me, and I began to craft the slideshow with a mixture of apprehension and anticipation. Each slide represented a fragment of my shattered trust, a visual reminder of the lies Laura had spun. As I pieced together the presentation, I felt a strange mix of power and sadness. I was reclaiming control over a situation that had left me feeling utterly helpless. The night before the party, my friends and I gathered to finalize the details. We shared drinks, laughter, and an undercurrent of excitement as we plotted out how the evening would unfold. I wanted to ensure that every person I invited understood the gravity of what would transpire. I needed them to see Laura not as my wife but as the woman who had shattered our vows and betrayed me most painfully. I want everyone to understand what she's done, I stated firmly, raising my glass for emphasis. This isn't just about me, it's about holding her accountable for her choices. As the night wore on, my friends cheered me on, their support fueling my determination. I could feel the anticipation building inside me, mingling with a sense of dread. Would I truly be able to go through with it? Would I be able to watch her face as she realized the extent of her exposure? The day of the party arrived, and I was a bundle of nerves and adrenaline. I dressed carefully, opting for a smart casual look that conveyed confidence. I wanted to project an image of strength, of someone who had risen above the pain. The atmosphere was charged as people began to arrive, filling the backyard with laughter and conversation. I greeted our friends, engaging in small talk, but my mind was racing, rehearsing the moments that would lead to the big reveal. I had set up a projector in the corner of the yard. The screen draped like a curtain waiting to unveil the truth. My heart raced as I watched everyone mingle, blissfully unaware of the storm that was about to hit. As the evening progressed, I gathered everyone around, my heart pounding in my chest. Thank you all for coming, I began, my voice steady despite the turmoil within. I wanted to share something important with you tonight, something that's been weighing on me for far too long. I could see the confusion in Laura's eyes as she approached, clearly sensing the shift in the atmosphere. The room was electric, the tension thick enough to slice through. I took a deep breath and prepared to expose her for the betrayal she had inflicted upon me. The moment had come, and I was ready to unveil the truth to the world. As I stood before my friends, the air was thick with anticipation. I could feel the weight of the moment pressing down on me, every heartbeat echoing with a mix of anxiety and exhilaration. I took a deep breath and pressed the button to start the slideshow. The first image flickered onto the screen, capturing everyone's attention instantly. The photos I had chosen were carefully curated, each one more damning than the last. I began by recounting the timeline of Laura's betrayal, laying bare the evidence I had meticulously collected. What you're about to see is not just speculation, it's proof of her infidelity, I said, my voice steady but laced with emotion. The first slide showed a picture of Laura and Alex at a bar, laughing together in a way that felt intimate. Almost too close for comfort. Gasps rippled through the crowd, and I could see my friends exchanging shocked glances. This was taken just a month ago, I continued, my heart racing. While I was at home, believing she was working late. As each subsequent image appeared, I narrated the sordid details, showcasing the text messages I had uncovered. Here, she talks about needing someone to fill the void, and here, she plans secret meetings. I could hear whispers of disbelief and confusion ripple through the group as they processed the information. Laura stood at the edge of the crowd, her face a mix of shock and fear. Her skin paled as the truth unfolded before our friends. I could see her attempting to formulate a response, her mouth opening and closing like a fish out of water. Matt, please, you don't have to do this. She finally pleaded, her voice shaky, but it only drew more attention to her. Do you think this is easy for me? I retorted, my anger bubbling to the surface. You think I wanted to expose you like this? You left me no choice. The intensity of the moment was palpable, and I could see my friends' expressions shifting from shock to sympathy for me, their loyalty quickly aligning with the evidence presented. With each slide, I laid out more incriminating details, the dates, the locations, the flirty exchanges. This isn't just about cheating. This is about the betrayal of our trust, our marriage. As I looked around the room, I could see friends nodding in disbelief, their faces a mix of concern and anger. It felt surreal to witness their reactions, each one a reflection of the pain I had been carrying alone for so long. Finally, I reached the last slide, which bore a simple, damning message: I can't stop thinking about you. Can we meet tonight? I let that message hang in the air like a dark cloud, the gravity of it weighing heavily on everyone. The room fell silent, the shock settling like a heavy blanket over us. Laura's composure cracked, her attempts at maintaining dignity crumbling. You don't understand, this isn't what it looks like, she shouted, desperation spilling from her lips. But her words felt hollow against the overwhelming evidence. What do you think it looks like? I shot back, my voice rising in frustration. You've betrayed our marriage and humiliated me in front of everyone we know. Her pleas fell on deaf ears as our friends processed the reality of what they had just witnessed. Their shock morphed into disbelief, and I could sense the shift in the atmosphere. No longer was Laura the beloved friend and wife, she had become the architect of her downfall. As the last slide faded and the truth hung heavily in the air, I watched Laura's face transform. The color drained from her cheeks as the reality of her situation sunk in. She was standing in front of our friends, stripped of her defenses, exposed in a way that was both painful to witness and incredibly satisfying. Matt, please, let's talk about this privately, she implored, stepping forward, but the hesitation and fear in her voice only served to push our friends further away. No one here believes you anymore, Laura, I said, my voice resolute. You've lost all credibility, and it's time for you to face the consequences of your actions. The room was charged with tension, and I could feel the weight of judgment bearing down on her. My friends exchanged looks of pity and disapproval, their loyalty firmly on my side. I felt an overwhelming sense of vindication. She had crafted her undoing, and I had merely given the evidence a platform. Laura, realizing the futility of her situation, turned on her heel and fled the party, tears streaming down her face. The sound of her footsteps echoed in the silence, a stark reminder of the loss we were both enduring. As she left, I could feel a strange mix of emotions: sadness for the love we once shared, anger at her betrayal, and a profound relief that I had finally stood up for myself. The aftermath of the revelation was palpable. Friends quickly rallied around me, offering support and condolences. I can't believe she would do that to you, Matt, Jake said, shaking his head in disbelief. You deserve so much better. Their words wrapped around me like a warm blanket, reassuring me that I was not alone in this painful moment. But as the evening wore on and the party continued without her, I realized that the damage had been done. Laura had not only lost my trust, she had lost the respect of everyone who had witnessed her betrayal. The whispers and gossip would spread, and her reputation would take a hit that she would struggle to recover from. I felt a bittersweet sense of triumph in knowing that I had exposed her for who she truly was. But it also left me feeling hollow. As I sat surrounded by friends, laughter, and conversation filling the air, a part of me longed for the life I had once envisioned with Laura. Yet, I understood that this was a necessary step toward my healing. She had made her choices, and now it was my turn to choose how I would move forward. The idea of starting anew, of reclaiming my life without the weight of her betrayal, began to settle into my consciousness. As the night wound down and my friends began to leave, I felt a sense of clarity washing over me. I had confronted the truth and faced the pain, and now I was ready to embrace a future free of deception. Laura's absence felt heavy, but it was also liberating. I was stepping into a new chapter of my life, one where I could define my own path, free from the shadows of betrayal. Looking out at the empty backyard, I knew that the road ahead would be difficult, but it would be my own. I had faced the storm, and I was ready to rebuild, stronger and more resilient than before. At that moment, I felt a flicker of hope for what was yet to come, a promise of a brighter future waiting just beyond the horizon.